In this video, I'm going to write an IELTS Writing Task 2 sample essay in response to a topic about, well, basically tiredness at work. Should we have a shorter working week? As you probably know, if you have a long working week, you're going to end up tired. So some people think we should have a shorter working week. Here's the task that I'm going to write an essay in response to. You should spend about 40 minutes on this task. Write about the following topic. The working week should be shorter and workers should have a longer weekend. Do you agree or disagree? Give reasons for your answer and include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. Write at least 250 words. And this task comes from Cambridge IELTS, the academic book 19. It's test 2 in book 19, one of the past papers books produced by Cambridge. So in this video, I'm going to start off by trying to understand the task. We're going to analyze the task. Then I'm going to plan the essay. I'll show you my plan. Then I'll write the essay, of course. And as I'm writing the essay, I'll also analyze the language that I've used in the essay. If you find this useful, then you will want to go to my website, which also has the information down here. It shows you my plan and my essay, and it gives you a vocabulary list as well. But also there are some practice exercises that you can have a go at yourself on your laptop or on your phone. So if you make a mistake like that, you can move the words into the correct place. You've got to try and rebuild the essay in the first exercise. And then there's an exercise here where you've got to put the paragraphs into the correct order. And a much harder exercise here where I've broken the essay into individual sentences. So you've got to put the essay or the sentences in the essay in the correct order, and then you can check it. And if you make a mistake, which you probably will, then you have to retry there. So go to my website. The link is in the description below this video so you can see those exercises, the vocabulary list and everything else. So next we're going to understand the task. We're going to analyze the task. So let's look at the topic statement first of all. The working week should be shorter and workers should have a longer weekend. So it's talking here about the working week, which in most Western countries anyway is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and our weekend is on Saturday and Sunday. And this statement here is an opinion statement, is arguing that the working week should be shorter and workers should have a longer weekend. So maybe 3 days instead of just 2. So that's the topic statement. And then here is the question. This is how you should respond to the topic statement. It's simply, do you agree or disagree? So it's asking for your opinion about this topic statement. The working week should be shorter and workers should have a longer weekend. So what do you think about that? Do you agree or do you disagree? I'm going to plan the essay now. You can see the task in the top right-hand corner. Very important to keep the task in your mind as you plan and as you write. So I will keep the task in the top right-hand corner for the rest of the video. So here was my plan. Well, first of all, I've got to decide my position. Personally, I strongly agree with the topic statement. I think it's a great idea. And here's why. You've got to give some reasons for your view in an essay like this. And I'm going to give 3 reasons for my position. My first reason is that a shorter working week enhances productivity. It makes workers more productive if they work fewer working days. But I have to explain this in more detail, of course, if I want to get a high band score. So I would argue that workers are better rested if they have a shorter working week. And I can also support this with some ideas from my own knowledge. So I've read that companies that have experimented with a 4-day work week report that their workers have more energy and they're able to focus more on their work. So that's some supporting details from my own knowledge. Here's my second reason. I think that a shorter working week means that workers will have a better work-life balance, and this is really important for mental health as well. And I can explain this in more detail too, so I can say that longer weekends lead to more time with your family. And also, a shorter working week means you have a chance to recharge mentally. And this can lower stress. And here are some examples that I've thought about. So again, from my own knowledge, I have read, I'm not sure if this is still the case today, so apologies to any Japanese viewers here, but I have heard that in Japan there is a culture of working so hard that people can die from overwork. So I'm going to put this into my essay, this culture of death from overwork. That used to be, or maybe is still the case in Japan. Whereas in somewhere like Denmark, I've heard that there is more satisfaction and well-being amongst workers because they have a better work-life balance. My third reason is that a shorter working week can reduce unemployment. Again, I can explain this in more detail. So companies may employ more workers if each worker works fewer hours. And again, from my own knowledge, I read about, I think it was in the year 2000, that in France they introduced the 35-hour work week. So in most countries, you may work maybe 38 or 40 hours, but in France, I think there's a limit of 35 hours. And there is evidence that this has reduced unemployment because if you've got fewer working hours, a company's got to employ more staff. So I'll explain all these points in my essay. So now it's time to write the essay. So again, the task is in the top right-hand corner. There are two things you should do in the introduction of your essay. You should firstly introduce the topic, and secondly, introduce your response. So I'm going to first of all introduce the topic of the essay. In recent years, there has been a growing debate over whether the traditional 5-day working week should be shortened to allow for longer weekends. This is paraphrasing the topic statement from the task. And now I'm going to introduce my response. So if you remember from my plan, I strongly agree with this statement. I firmly agree that reducing the working week would yield significant benefits for both employees and employers. So this clearly states my opinion in the introduction. I firmly agree. Let's look at some of the vocabulary I've used here. In recent years is a very useful phrase if you're talking about a trend or a development. In recent decades can also be used, but this is something that people have talked about over the last few years. There's been a growing debate over. We have a debate over different issues. I've used here the word shortened. Now in the task, if you look at the task in the top right-hand corner, it says shorter. The working week should be shorter. Shorter is an adjective. Shortened is a verb. So I've changed the words around a little bit. And this is evident for the examiner that I can use vocabulary in a flexible way. When examiners think about flexibility in your vocabulary use, one of the things they're looking for is, can you change the form or the word class of a word? So can you change an adjective into a verb, which is exactly what I've done here. I firmly agree that is a very clear way of introducing my opinion. And here's another nice phrase: yield significant benefits. This is another way of saying brings significant benefits. So that's my introduction. Very short, 2 sentences, introduces the topic of the task, and it introduces my opinion. You don't, though, get many points for your introduction. It's in the body where you get your points, your band scores sorted out. So let's write body paragraph 1. Firstly, a shorter working week can enhance productivity. That's my opening sentence. It presents my main idea, which I used in the plan. So a shorter working week can enhance productivity, but I need to explain this in more detail. Maybe explain why it can enhance productivity. So here's my second sentence. There is increasing evidence to suggest that reduced working hours can equate to increased output because workers are better rested. So if they're better rested, they can work better, they have increased output, which is another way of talking about enhancing productivity. For instance, some companies have experimented with a 4-day work week and observed that employees not only maintained, but often exceeded previous productivity levels. So I'm trying to cite evidence here that companies have done this, and they're reporting that, yes, their workers are better rested and they work better. They've enhanced the productivity of their company. The additional rest allowed workers to return to work with renewed energy and greater focus, leading to more efficient performance. So I've explained why workers are more productive if they work less, if they have reduced working hours. Let's look at some of the vocabulary here in this body paragraph. So I've introduced the paragraph with a transition signal firstly, which is very useful. Here's a nice phrase, enhance productivity. That's going to impress the examiner with vocabulary. Workers are better rested. For instance, so I'm introducing an example, a specific detail to support my argument. Here's a nice complex grammatical structure, not only maintained but often exceeded previous productivity levels, and renewed energy and greater focus. So 2 good natural collocations. So let's go to body paragraph 2 and my second idea. Secondly, extending the weekend promotes a better work-life balance, which is crucial for mental health. So this is my second point about a better work-life balance, which is important for mental health. Again, I need to explain this in more detail. Longer weekends provide employees with more opportunities to engage in leisure activities, spend quality time with their family, and recharge mentally. So I've talked here about the better work-life balance. What does a better work-life balance mean? Well, it's things like more leisure activities, spending time with your family, and just resting your brain, really. So that's what I mean by a better work-life balance. And I've explained again why it's important for mental health. So I've explained my first sentence in more detail in the second sentence, but I can add some more details too. This can reduce stress levels and prevent burnout. So burnout is when you're so tired, you simply can't work at all. In countries like Japan, where the work culture has even led to death from overwork, it is evident that insufficient rest can have dire consequences. Dire consequences. So that's the example I've used from Japan, which I put in my plan. If you remember my plan, I also mentioned Denmark. By contrast, nations that prioritize work-life balance, like Denmark, often report higher levels of employee satisfaction and well-being. So my idea that extending the weekend promotes a better work-life balance has been developed with specific examples of Japan and Denmark, and I've explained my ideas in more detail. So the whole point of developing your ideas is to get into ever-increasing detail. Let's look at some of the vocabulary. So it's my second idea, so I'll put down secondly. A better work-life balance is a good example of Band 9 vocabulary. Employees with more opportunities to engage in leisure activities. Now that's a complex noun phrase. If you look at the words before it, longer weekends provide. So longer weekends provide something. And that thing is this extended noun phrase, employees with more opportunities to engage in leisure activities. That's the kind of structure that will get you a Band 9, not just for grammar, but also for vocabulary. Prevent burnout. Burnout is a very precise word, and it often collocates with the verb prevent. Here's a specific example of Japan. Death from overwork is a very precise phrase. Dire consequences. This means very, very bad effects. Dire consequences is a very natural collocation. By contrast is a useful transition signal to indicate to the reader I'm going to give a contrasting example. Now let's go to body paragraph 3. Moreover, shortening the working week could help alleviate unemployment by distributing available workers amongst more people. So this is my third idea, that it's going to reduce unemployment. So I've introduced that in the first sentence, and now I'm going to explain this in more detail. If companies require the same amount of labour hours, but individual employees work fewer hours, they will need to hire additional staff to meet their needs. So I've explained why I think that shortening the working week could help reduce unemployment. They'll have to employ more staff, right, to meet their needs if they want the same number of hours to be worked. Indeed, some countries, such as France, have adopted a 35-hour work week which aims to reduce unemployment by spreading work more evenly across the population. So that's my specific example. This has been done, I believe, in France. They've adopted a 35-hour work week. So that's an example from my own knowledge. Let's look at the vocabulary. Moreover. So this is a very useful transition signal to say that I'm adding some more information. I could say thirdly, but it's getting a bit boring. Firstly, secondly, thirdly. So I've used moreover to introduce some more variation. Could help alleviate unemployment. That's another way of talking about reducing unemployment. I've used a complex verb phrase here, could help alleviate. If is always a useful structure. If you start a sentence with if, it means you're going to use a conditional. So we have if they will need to hire in the second clause. If you use the word if, an examiner is going to sit up and take notice because they're thinking, there's a conditional coming here. Then I'm going to introduce my example of France, and I've used the phrase indeed. It basically means in fact. And down here, which, I've got a relative clause here, which actually refers back to the idea of a 35-hour work week. So it's also got some referencing here. And now I'm going to look at the conclusion. In conclusion, shortening the working week and extending the weekend offers multiple advantages, including increased productivity, improved mental health, and potential reductions in unemployment. So I've simply summarized my 3 ideas here. Therefore, it is a proposal that merits serious consideration by both policymakers and businesses seeking to optimize performance and enhance quality of life. And that's it. That's all I'm going to write for the conclusion. Just 2 sentences there. The first sentence summarizes my main ideas. The second sentence is a purely optional sentence that says why this idea is important. Let's look at the vocabulary. In conclusion, it's a perfectly good way of introducing a conclusion. Offers multiple advantages, is a nice collocation. Increased productivity is a good collocation as well. Improved mental health. So that's my second idea. And potential reductions in unemployment is my third idea. So you can see how I've summarized my 3 reasons. Merits serious consideration is a nice phrase that you can use in these kinds of essays. So that's my essay. And remember, if you want to see the full essay, you can go to my website, look in the description under the video for the link, and you can see the complete vocabulary list as well as my plan. And then, of course, you can have a go at these practice exercises. The first 2 practice exercises are quite easy. The third practice exercise, which is further down the page, is quite difficult. So you may have to have a go several times to get exercise 3 done correctly. So good luck with that, and thank you very much for watching.